Good evening everyone and welcome to my YouTube channel. So here today we are going to be discussing a biology topic which is the bright field versus the dark field microscopy. So what are some of the mechanisms? Firstly, when you hear the word bright field, you should think of bright as in the background. So dark field has to do with bright field has to do with the bright background. So when you just hear the word bright, think of the background. When you hear the word dark, dark field has to do with the background as well. So when we say dark field microscopy, we are simply going to be talking about the background. Is it dark? So already dark field has to do with a dark background, bright field has to do with a bright background. Now you might ask yourself, how is this done? So the mechanism of how this is done is very simple. Firstly, how do you create a bright background but maintain the image to be bright, or dark background but the image to be black? So this is the concept. So let's imagine you have a wall here. You have a wall, then you have your source of light. So let's say this is your source of light like that. Now, from the onset, let's say we have a wall here. So if we have a wall here, what begins to happen is that, let's say that the thing here, we have something that light cannot pass through. So let's say light cannot pass through this. So what begins to happen is that when the light shines, it will be able to move like that. It will be able to move like that, but it will be stopped at this point. So the light will be able to shine at all points, but at this point, this is where the image, let's say the image is being formed at this point. So at this point, the image, how the image will look, since the light is passing at all points except this point. So you may realize to say the image that will be formed, this is a real life practical example, the image that will be formed at this point will be a dark image. So the image that will be formed at that point will be a dark image, though you cannot see the distinction, but this is your dark image. Why is it dark? So the reason is, so as we can see, this is a dark. The reason is simple, because light cannot pass through like that. So this is the concept of the bright field microscopy like that. So this is the concept of the bright field microscopy. Light does not have to pass through the specimen. So now with that said, it simply means to say the bright field microscopy, for it to operate, you need to stain organisms. So you need to stain organisms. That is very, very important. So organisms are stained so that light does not pass through them. When an organism is stained, it is able to absorb light. Now, when it absorbs light, the image that is formed will be a dark image like that. We are going to look at the specifics. Now, when we look at our dark field, so for the second illustration, this is for the bright field, dark field, sorry. So dark field, we have this opaque. So what is the meaning of opaque? Simply means to say it does not allow light to pass through it. So now let's imagine what happens there. So when the rays of light come into contact with this, they are not able to penetrate. Now what begins to happen is that, how about these rays of light that comes into contact with our condenser there? So the condenser's function is to more like make the microscopes, the rays of light to be focused. So as you can see, at this moment in time, there is no like light at this point. Here there was no light, here there is no light. Now what begins to happen is this. When the image now, the specimen is at this point. The specimen is at this point. Now when the image is formed, what begins to happen is that the image is formed at this point. Now realize, due to the fact that yes, rays of light might pass like that, the rays of light might pass like. So as we can see, this is our image. Now if you look at the image where it is formed, so we have this one was our specimen. Now this is the image. What we see when we look at the eyepiece. Now you can see that this is dark. This, even the background is dark. So that's why there is a dark background against a light image. So the image is light. This is simply because light is passing through the image. Under the dark field microscopy, you do not have to, more like, you don't have to stain the specimen. The specimen is not stained so that light can be able to pass through the specimen. So now, with that said, this is how these two operates. Now let's look at the real microscope. Now, the dark field and the bright field are used to look at live specimen. That is very, very important. Live specimen, you can be able to see them, so they can be alive but still be able to see them. They can be moving. So that's the way it is. Now these ones, the tool provides a resolution of about 200 nanometers. What we simply mean is that this is the shortest distance between 2 points that you can see to say these points are considered to be separate. That is what we mean by the resolution of 200 nanometers. So these are our side-to-side diagrams. So if you look at the one that has got an opaque disc before the condenser, this is what we call the dark field microscopy. So now the specimen is here. So for the dark field microscopy, the specimen is unstained, meaning to say light can just pass through the image like that. However, when we look at the bright field microscopy, there is no opaque disc. An opaque disc does not allow light to pass through it. So meaning to say, when the light is condensed, we need to have this one absorb light. Then we have other light that is passing from the background, which we have explained. So now this light enters the objective lens. Then the objective lens focuses the light on the ocular lens. The ocular lens is the eyepiece now. So what the person will see in the dark field, in the bright field, is that the background will be considered to be bright, but the image will be considered to be dark like that, as I have explained earlier. When you look at your dark field microscopy, since there is the optic disc here, which does not allow light to pass through it, only light that is oblique, meaning to say at an angle, will be able to reach the condenser. The condenser focuses on the image. Now the image is not stained, meaning to say light can pass through it, thereby making the image to look bright. It's more like it's being colored by light. That is what you may think of. So the image becomes bright against a dark background. So the background is dark. I have, as the name entails, dark fields. The background is dark, then the image is bright. So the image is a bright spot like that against a, just consider this one, against the dark background like that. Then when we look at this one, the background is bright against the background is bright against a dark image. This one, background is dark against a bright image. So don't mix up the two, just for clarity. Bright field, bright background, dark image. Dark field, dark image, dark background, bright image. So that is the working principle of the two microscopes. The contrast is the ability to distinguish the image. So for the dark field microscopy, the image is having very high contrast because it is dark. For the bright field, there is less contrast, meaning to say it is a bit difficult to distinguish the image from the background. That is the way it is. Thank you very much for watching. Hope you would like, subscribe, and share for more.